This may well be one of the biggest film surprises I have had in a long time. I just got back from watching Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, a film which, let's be honest, did not get the greatest reception when the trailer and the original posters were released, because also, let's be honest, the trailer and the posters didn't make the film look too good. I just got back from watching it now. I'm going to give you my kind of spoiler-free thoughts. Let me know if you want a spoiler review as well, because I can do one. If you are new here, feel free to hit the subscribe button, hit a like, and all that good stuff. Without further ado, we're going to get into this spoiler-free quick review. I've just got back now. I'm just going to give you my thoughts, my opinions, what I liked, what I didn't like. Haven't really rehearsed anything, haven't noted anything down as of yet, so I'm just going to be spitballing a little bit. So hopefully you are open to listening to me just talk some absolute nonsense for a few minutes. So, Dungeons & Dragons is a film where I didn't know much about going into it. I knew that it was high fantasy. I knew that it was going to really rely on comedy to work. We gathered that from the trailer. Haven't played Dungeons & Dragons myself, so I don't know much about the lore, etc. But I am actually keen to know a little bit more now, which says a lot about the film in its entirety. I was in from the first 10 minutes. I really, really was. I think that this film is a barrel of fun. I think that it is hilarious, and I am known to not laugh at that many films. There's not many comedies that nowadays actually manage to have me in almost tears seated in the cinema, and this film did just that. It does rely heavily on comedy. It is high fantasy, and it's a big visual epic. There is a lot going on. In terms of not only the characters, but in terms of the lore, in terms of the villains, in terms of everything provided, there is a lot going on. And one thing I will say, to get a negative straight off the bat, straight out of the way, let's talk about this negative. There is a lot of exposition. There is a lot to do with this film. There is a lot of characters describing where they came from and kind of speaking to the viewer almost as if you were kind of idiotic to what you were hearing, which again, it may not be a bad thing. It may be down to preference, and of course there's a lot of people who haven't played Dungeons & Dragons like myself, so they might want to know a little bit about the lore, but we don't need to hear everything. I'm just going to get that negative out of the way straight away before I move on to the many positives I have with this film. Let's go with the visuals first of all. Visually, it was incredible. We see a lot of films now that heavily use visual and special effects, VX effects, whatever, and this does it completely just better than most. I'm gonna, I don't like to do direct comparisons with films I haven't particularly liked or hated in Ant-Man and Quantumania's case, but Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, you compare this to this film in terms of visual effects, and I think it's stunning what they actually managed to achieve here. I think that this is high fantasy. I want more of it. I want this film to do really well because I'm massively partial to fantasy cinema. And I think this is just what you need. Not only are the characters fun and enjoyable and most of all likable, and there is this sense of camaraderie and friendship, what you receive from them, which is in tune with the Dungeons & Dragons theme and how you play the game, but there is so many creatures, there is so many weird and absurd animals and types of people. You're looking at the Game of Thrones, you're looking at I'm not comparing it or anything, but the kind of lore when there's so much to look at. Every moment I would see a funny animal, a funny character, a weirdly shaped thing, and just be in complete awe. Not only how they created it, but how funny it was and how absurd it was, which is the main thing here. This film is silly, it's self-aware, and it's completely and utterly absurd, which is perfectly fine. Not every film has to be layered in subtext, which goes further. There can just be this kind of fun, highbrow fantasy, which works in a way that surprised me. I think every minute I would see a fat dragon, let's say. I'm just going to spoil there is a fat dragon, which was really funny. And then the next, I would be excited for 5 minutes later to see what other creature they would come up with, what other style they would come up with, whatever graphics they would come up with, or whatever type of person they would come up with. All the main characters are really, really great. I don't think that there is performances which are, influential, revolutionary in the fantasy genre, whatever that might be, but I think that all of them served a purpose. I think that I was surprised going into it because, as I said before, the trailer didn't exactly make it look in the best light, and also I wasn't expecting that much from the characters, I'll be honest. They're all funny. Standouts really being Chris Pine. He is the kind of the main guy. He is obviously the main character, so you kind of expect that. But everyone else was funny. Everyone had their own little one-liners. Yes, not all of them stick, but it's going to be very, very rare to find a film that relies this much on comedy, which every single line of every single piece of dialogue is going to stick. And yes, they do rely so much on the exposition, especially in the earlier sequences. But when you've got characters as likable as these, in a way you kind of want to know more about, and you want to learn, you want the exposition there, even though it does get in the way a bit and potentially prolong the runtime to a point where it didn't need to be. Although I didn't actually have a particular issue with the runtime. I think 2 hours 15, 2 hours 20 was actually a perfect amount for this film in particular. Hugh Grant was great. Really enjoyed him as kind of our secondary antagonist, let's say, with obviously the one there with the red hood on, the wizard being the primary antagonist. Overall, I think this was so fun. There were several sequences which had me almost in tears, and like I said before, there hasn't been a film in a cinema that's managed to do that in a while, and I definitely didn't expect it from a really, a high fantasy, which, let's be honest, from the trailer, from the poster, most people did kind of deem as maybe cringe, maybe rely too much on these kind of witty one-liners, which we've seen, again, I don't want to go back to, but we've seen a lot from the MCU, for example, where they kind of rely on these witty one-liners, which you get to a point of maturity where they stop being funny after a while. And not to say that the MCU is not funny in totality, and it's not to say that we don't get funny films nowadays, because we do. I just think this one took a audacious route to do it. I think doing a fantasy with comedy is a big risk. It's something which is oftentimes, for a lot of filmmakers, a recipe for disaster. I think it's audacious. I think it's a big risk in filmmaking, and I think it can get thrown back in your face. But I do think that they succeeded in the way they wanted to, with it being self-aware, with it being silly, with it being having this sense of friendship, of camaraderie, but also with having these epic fight sequences. There's some good fight sequences, some really tense and suspenseful moments, and more than that, there is actually a few minor jump scares here and there as well, which did surprise me, because I didn't really expect it. But it does exactly what it says on the tin, and I think that it's a massive accomplishment for a filmmaker to push that out and achieve that without it going sour, and also without it overstaying its welcome. I think maybe this film, with another 20 minutes or so, might have overstayed its welcome a bit, because, as I say, there is a certain point in time where the over-reliance on comedy might get a bit much for some people. Maybe not for myself, but I can see it for some people. But for me, this was kind of the perfect length. Potentially could have overstayed its welcome, so they had to, with a film like this, you kind of have to tread carefully in terms of how much you use and also how long it goes on for. Because, let's be honest, let's get to the bare bones of it. In terms of the story and the narrative, it's a little bit predictable. You know what's going to happen, but that doesn't take your, or at least it didn't take my enjoyment away from the actual film itself, because that's not really what I cared for. I cared for seeing the friendships develop. I cared for the likeable characters. I cared for seeing the completely absurd and hilarious characters and animals and creatures on show, because that's what this is all about. This is high fantasy, this is comedy fantasy, and it serves the exact purpose it tries to do. It's funny, it's epic, it's visually creative, it's innovative. It may rely too much on exposition, and the dialogue may not be amazing at times, but again, that's kind of down to your preference and how much you want from it. But overall, I'm going to say go and watch it. Go in with an open mind, try and look past the less than average poster and trailer, and just try and go into open mind, and you will probably have fun with this film. I'm not going to say that everyone will, because everyone likes different things, and that's fine. But what I am going to say is I went into this as a massive skeptic, much like a lot of people, and I was very, very positively surprised.